She burst into tears and gave her mother a call. However, when her father heard Sharon was in a bar and had spent $30,000 in one night, he was enraged and scolded her for her foolishness. After hanging up, Sharon cried even harder. However, the bar owner was clearly not sympathetic, so he ignored her distress. "You're an idiot," he said. "You hired my bar without money? Did you think I was stupid? Well, you can stay here and work in the bar for 6 months to pay off what you owe me." Working in a bar for 6 months, she thought. I can't bear the thought of that. After doing it for 6 months, I'll feel like a piece of trash. She didn't dare think any further. Her eyes lit up after she glanced at Fraser. She went over to him and started begging. "Please, can you pay the $30,000 as well?" Fraser felt like laughing at the nerve of the woman. However, he calmly said, "I'm sorry, Miss Mackenzie, but I'm just a nobody, and I don't have that much money." He turned to the bar owner and asked, "I don't have any obligation to help her pay her bill, do I?" "Of course not," the owner replied. He couldn't wait for Fraser to leave. The money he would make Sharon earn from working there for 6 months would be more than $30,000. "So, can I take my sister-in-law now?" The owner made a gesture of dismissal and said, "Of course, please go ahead." He then added, "I apologize for what happened today. From now on, you'll receive a 50% discount when you come here. You'll always be very welcome here." "Thank you for your generosity." Even as Fraser said that, he thought that even with the 50% discount, the owner would still be able to make a profit from him. As expected of a businessman, he had his sales ploy in order as always. On the way home, Lynn stared at Fraser several times and hesitated to speak. In the end, she didn't say anything. "The money must have come from the proceeds of his huge property sale," she thought. "I need to find a job in the future and try my best to pay the money back. I don't want to owe him that favor." Back home, Natalia was still waiting in the living room when they arrived. When she discovered that Lynn reeked of alcohol, she immediately blamed Fraser. "Are you crazy? How could you let my sister get into that state? Stick to going drinking with your cronies in the future," she fired her husband. Fraser was speechless at her unfair accusation. Lynn grinned and looked apologetically at him. He pointed at her, hoping she would say a few words to clear his name, but she kept mum and headed straight to her room. That night, Fraser didn't even feel that it was safe to go back to his room to sleep. The next day, Fraser was so tired that he found it hard to stay awake over breakfast. Natalia gave him some fried eggs and toast and said, "Eat up and then go back to sleep. You don't have to work anyway. By the way, tomorrow night my parents are going to hold a family dinner to meet my new sister-in-law. They've already decided on the location. Make sure that you're there." "Okay, I will," he replied. The next day in the afternoon, Fraser revisited the car dealer. The salesperson remembered him and was eager to help. Fraser asked him to prepare a top-of-the-line car and asked for it to be delivered to the entrance of the restaurant where the family was eating that evening. He paid $350,000, and under the envious gazes of the sales team, he swaggered out of the showroom. "If they want to bully my wife, I'll make them sorry," he thought. At 5 o'clock, Fraser, Natalia, and Lynn walked into a private room on the restaurant's second floor. As soon as they entered, they saw a pretty girl with her head down, sitting at the head of the table and playing on her phone. Natalia was annoyed to see her family smiling apologetically at her. Typically, on such grand occasions, the person sitting in the main seat would be hostess. Now, Not only had he given up the top position, but he had given it up to an outsider he had never met before. Natalia found it challenging to suppress her disapproval. "So, I take it you're my brother's girlfriend, Pearl. Didn't your parents teach you any manners? Do you think it's okay to sit at the head of the table?" She opened up unhesitatingly. Pearl stopped playing with her phone and looked up at Natalia with some surprise. She had a mean expression, which gave Natalia the impression that her future sister-in-law wasn't someone who would be easy to deal with. Pearl looked at Hostess and Dorothy, whose expressions had changed slightly. Then she snorted and said, "You must be Natalia, right? I don't think anyone else minds me sitting here, so there's no need for you to be concerned about it." Pearl went on to put on an act and asked, "Hostess, Dorothy, do you have any objections?" Their faces were full of smiles, and Hostess said, "No, it's fine. You can sit wherever you want, even when you're at home. Just as long as you're happy." "See? Hostess and Dorothy aren't bothered," she said. "So just chill out, sister." James also spoke up to protect his fiancée. "Natalia, Pearl will be your sister-in-law soon, so don't talk to her like that." Natalia felt a wave of injustice. Previously, the most important person had been her father. However, now that Pearl was there, he had given up his status in the family. Seeing that his wife was about to say something to her father, Fraser pulled her aside and whispered, "It's only a meal. Let's just get through this as peacefully as possible." Both Natalia and Lynn felt uneasy about their future sister-in-law. The more they looked at her, the more concerned they became about the Laplace family. They were already resentful toward her because they had been told they would have to leave the family home because of her. Fraser wanted to sit next to his wife, but before he could sit down, James kicked away the chair and, using his eyes, signaled toward another chair near the door. "Know your place, loser," he said. Natalia frowned when she heard that. Recently, her image of Fraser had changed a lot, so she wanted to speak up for him. However, thinking about how her husband had made her swallow the words she had been about to say to Pearl, she decided not to speak. As for Lynn, she always did as she was told in front of her parents and James. Fraser seemed to be used to it. He smiled and didn't care at all. He casually sat in the chair next to the door. After a while, the waiter came through, and he sat up. When the waiter had finally finished serving the dishes, James stood up, holding his glass, and introduced Pearl to everyone with a smile. Fraser noticed that while she was being introduced, she had a haughty look, and it was hard for him to tell what her feelings were toward James. He could not see what was so good about her, and why she had been able to turn the Laplace family upside down. James said, "I want to propose a toast to my darling Pearl, who is soon to be the newest member of this happy family. To Pearl." Pearl clinked her glass against those around her. However, she purposefully avoided Fraser's glass and smiled contemptuously at him. "You must be the Laplace's son-in-law, right?" she asked. "Yes, my name's Fraser." "I'm sorry," she said, "but being related to you is too embarrassing, so I don't want to drink with you." After saying that, she looked away and gulped down the wine in her glass. The atmosphere became awkward, and Fraser, whose glass was hanging in the air, took a sip of his drink and seemed not to care. In the 3 years he had been with the Laplace family, he hadn't tried to retain any pride. Even though he could endure the humiliation, it didn't mean that others could as well. His wife was one such example. Although Natalia had always looked down on Fraser, he was still her husband, and there was only so much she could take. She slammed her glass on the table, and, ignoring Dorothy's warning glance, she asked coldly, "Pearl, what exactly do you mean?"
To watch the full episode, install the Pocket FM app